Here we are with the final mock draft of 2022, the final edition of Where Does Chet Holmgren Go? Where does Jaden Ivey go? Who trades open to the top 4? We are not going to be doing any more drafts after this day. So starting with number 1 overall to the Orlando Magic, no surprises here if you've been following our draft content on the channel. Jabari Smith is my number 1 rated prospect. I think in talent-wise overall, if you do like a 2K overall grade, I think Jabari is a 79. I think Chet Holmgren's a 79, but Jabari is a 79 because of his offensive ability. Chet is a 79 because of his defensive ability. And in today's NBA, offense reigns supreme. Look no further than the champion Golden State Warriors with Stephanie Curry. Number 2 to the Thunder goes Chet Holmgren. Great length, great size that they need for so long in this centerless team that they've had with like Isaiah Roby, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and Derek Favors being their centers. It's just not cutting it. Number 3, great pickup for the Rockets, who also need to fill that Christian Wood-sized hole on their team with Paolo Banchero at the 4, probably Alperen Şengün at the 5. They're going to be a little small, but I think it's going to be a really interesting looking team. Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, Jae'Sean Tate, Paolo Banchero, and Alperen Şengün. Going to be a really fun, really young team up and coming. Number 4, this is where I'm going to go a little bit different here. Jaden Ivey has specifically said, well, he said in like corporate terms, you know, when you send an email, to all who may be concerned, please do not, he said like official bullshit. I wouldn't prefer to go to Sacramento, which in reality translates to fuck you Kings, you guys suck, I don't want to go there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take somebody who might want to go to Sacramento, who might want to go a little bit earlier than expected, in Keegan Murray. It fills a need on their team at the 4 position. Hypothetically, they could be set. De'Aaron Fox at the 1, Dante DiVincenzo at the 2, Harrison Barnes at the 3, and then Keegan Murray at the 4 with Domantas Sabonis playing the 5 position. It's going to be a little bit weird, a little bit different. Not what I've been mocking for the majority of the time, but I think they're going to take into account Jaden Ivey doesn't want to be there. They're going to take into account that Shadon Sharpe probably doesn't want to be there. And they're going to pull a Kings and draft not the best player available at their position. Maybe they trade down, but I'm taking Keegan Murray to the Kings at pick number 4, which leads Jaden Ivey to fall to number 5, which is a huge steal. I've repeatedly said Jaden Ivey is my number 2 rated prospect in the class. I've been mocking him to the Pistons ever since we started this series, even when the Pistons were picking at number 2. Going to be a huge, great pickup for them. It's almost like they never fell in the draft, which means number 6 is wide open. Now, the fit doesn't make a lot of sense. They already have Malcolm Brogdon. They already have Tyrese Haliburton. You don't need another combo guard, but Shadon Sharpe is just too much talent to pass up at this position, which brings me to the number 7 pick, and it's an interesting spot. Where do the Trailblazers go? Really, you need a big forward that gives you a lot of size, a little defense, a little offense, kind of a do-it-all. Keegan Murray would be great here if he falls to 7, but he's just not going to. So I'm taking the next best forward in Ben Mathurin. Now, he's 6'6", so he's not going to be, a 6'8", 6'10 kind of monster that they really need at the power forward position. But I think he could provide defense, so he can provide scoring, and he doesn't need the ball in his hand all day because they have Damian Lillard, because they have Anthony Simons. You need somebody who's hopefully not going to be taking away possessions from those 2 guys. Number 8, and this is a really interesting pick. Where do you want to go with this player? Now, hypothetically, theoretically, if they go Dyson Daniels, I have no problems. I also, just like, who's this, ESPN, have Dyson Daniels as my number 6 prospect off the board. But I think the Pelicans are going to do a point guard by committee thing, just like they've been doing with the Boston Celtics, where Brandon Ingram's going to bring the ball up the court, where CJ McCollum's going to bring the ball up the court, and where, if he's ever healthy, Zion Williamson is going to bring the ball up the court. I just think their philosophy is we don't really need a point guard. We're going to have Jose Alvarado lock down the other team's point guard. We're going to have Devontae Graham come in. Kyra Lewis Jr. is going to be coming back from injury. I think they don't feel that point guard is a need. This is all theoretical, hypothetical, and I think they take the best player available after Dyson Daniels, and that's going to be Johnny Davis. Mid-range assassin, really impressive player. Didn't have a great March Madness, but I think he would fit perfectly on their bench, give him a little more scoring, which means number 9, Dyson Daniels, still the best player available. I don't know why they're saying point guard need is severe when they have an all-star caliber point guard in Dejounte Murray and a perfectly capable backup in Trey Jones. So I'm going to be going where I've been going repeatedly with the Spurs, Ousmane Dieng. I'm probably the highest NBA scout there is on Ousmane Dieng. I actually have him number 10 on my big board. So I think going to a team that needs length, that needs sides, makes too much sense for the San Antonio Spurs, which means the best point guard in the class does in fact fall to 10 to a team that needs a point guard like no other, save for the Knicks, who ironically pick next, in Dyson Daniels. Huge pickup. Finally get the monkey off their back, picking up the point guard that they've needed since John Wall left. And Russell Westbrook, I guess, in theory. Moving on to the Knicks at number 11, and I just don't know what to go with this spot. I don't really want to draft a 3-and-D prospect. They have so many of them already. We detailed that in probably one of the last mock drafts, but Alec Burks, RJ Barrett, Evan Fournier, Quentin Grimes, Cam Reddish, Miles McBride, Emmanuel Quickly, all of those guys are really two guards or small forwards. They just don't need another one in an AJ Griffin or Malachi Branham. I'm not sure what they're going to do at the center position. Are they letting Mitchell Robinson walk? And even if you are, I don't think you want to prioritize that position in today's NBA. The center just doesn't really matter. So I think taking a Jalen Duren, while he's a very good prospect, isn't the right move to make at this spot. Because even if Mitchell Robinson is gone, Nerlens Noel coming back from injury is a very capable backup undersized center. Taj Gibson is still playing. He's a very smart center as well. And Jericho Sims, I think, is going to get a good run this season. He played pretty solid in the second half of the season when he finally got some run. I just don't think the center position is a huge need, especially in today's NBA. So I'm going a little bit different here. I'm going Ty Washington. And what they're going to do if they'd make this draft pick is they're going to hope Ty Washington can continue to develop, but become a little bit more of a facilitator than a scorer. They already have their undersized Kentucky guard and Emmanuel Quickly, who prioritizes scoring. Maybe Ty Washington can lean a little bit more on facilitation for the team, and they can get that point guard monkey off their back that they've needed since, God, the Carmelo Anthony days, probably. Moving on to pick 12, and this is where I'm going to go Jalen Duren. I think he's just another center, more size for this team that's been missing centers since 2013. I think you double up on your needs here if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder. Jalen Duren, one of the top 5 prospects. If this was like 2001, back when centers actually mattered, great pickup for them. As for another team that needs another center back-to-back, the Charlotte Hornets, their really only need is a center and maybe a backup point guard, and eventually figuring out what to do with Gordon Hayward and his abusive contract. But take Mark Williams at 13. Don't look back. Number 14, we're routinely been mocking this as well, Ochai Agbaji. I think Ochai is getting a little bit underrated just because he's a senior. Very good player. Brought a championship to Kansas. Is going to help bring a championship to Cleveland, which means number 15 to the Charlotte Hornets. And this is a good spot where I think AJ Griffin should go. Now, in theory, if you look at the details, if you turn injuries off, AJ Griffin is a top 6, top 7 prospect in this draft class. I have no problems with ESPN ranking him at 9. But those injury red flags are a huge concern. He's already super young and having injury red flags. What's going to happen when he's 22, 23? What's going to happen when he's 27, 28, and he's not as youthful as he is? He can't recover as quickly from a sprained ankle or a bum knee. I think the red flags should be much more concerning to all teams who are drafting AJ Griffin. And I think a team like the Charlotte Hornets are perfect because they don't really need him to be on their team to excel. Well, at the same time, if he hits, you go, oh my God, we have this incredible 3-and-D prospect, 7-foot wingspan, 45% from the three-point line. I think it makes a lot of sense for him to go around 15. Moving on to pick 16, the Atlanta Hawks are a team that has a little bit of everything and needs a little bit of everything as well. They have their point guard of the future, their superstar, Trae Young. They have basically the whole roster filled out. Theoretically, they have Bogdanovich, they have Gallinari, they have John Collins, they have Clint Capella, they have DeLon Wright, Kevin Huerter, DeAndre Hunter, last year's pickup, Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu. They just need that top-end, needle-moving talent. So what I think you do with this position is you take a great defender in Jeremy Sochan, you hope that he becomes a good offensive player, and you say, you know what, you're at the very least going to be a good 6'10" defensive stopper for us, a little bit like what DeAndre Hunter provides you right now, and you hope that he develops a little Kawhi Leonard-ish where he develops that jumper and becomes a superstar that puts your team over the top, which means number 17 to the Rockets, and I think at this point you just take best player available, Malachi Branham. Now, theoretically, you could go your needs here. You could take a big center a little bit early. You could take a point guard, but I think Kevin Porter Jr. is going to get another run for his second season as the starting point guard, pairing up alongside Jalen Green. And I think you just take another guy who's a great 3-and-D prospect. Malachi Branham shot, I think, 43% from the three-point line last season. Super young, super raw prospect, and that's going to be okay for the Houston Rockets because they are all young players. They are all upside, all development, fast-tracking them into hopefully getting good in a couple seasons. Malachi Branham fits the timeline perfectly. Moving on to number 18, another curious position for another team that we're not really sure what direction you want to go in. When I was playing around with this pick, you could go Tari Eason, get a solid 3-and-D kind of player. You could go point guard if you really wanted to. You could go EJ Liddell for an undersized 4, Jaden Hardy, a little scoring off the bench. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a dart, and I'm going to say, you know what? They have their center. Nikola Vucevic is fine, although they are trying to move him for like Rudy Gobert. I think you take the next best center, an athletic big, 7 feet tall, listed at 6'10" here. Crazy athletic, the perfect prototypical rim runner. Just another guy who plays great defense, is a great athlete, is a great rim protector, blocking every shot with a 7'5" wingspan, and Christian Koloko, to the Bulls to be their backup, if not starting center when Nikola Vucevic sucks and is awful athletically. I think it makes a lot of sense for the team. Now, they do need some 3-and-D prospects as well. I don't blame them if they go with Jalen Williams here or they go Nikola Jovic, but I think taking their center that they've been needing because Nikola Vucevic is a defensive liability makes a lot of sense. And here at pick 19, another team a little bit like the Bulls, just kind of have a lot of players, have a lot of positions. They could use another 3-and-D prospect, sure, like a Tari Eason or Jalen Williams. They could draft like the last ESPN mock draft wanted, Walker Kessler, and they could play a double big lineup. What the fuck? But I think you take the best 3-and-D big wing player available, and that is Nikola Jovic. Now, he's not going to be your classic play defense, shoot the 3 ball, and don't touch the ball. Other than that, he's more of a facilitating ball handler. And on a team that has D'Angelo Russell as your primary facilitator, I think it makes a little bit of sense to have him coming off the bench, running with the 2s. He can shoot the 3 to some extent. He's a good defender. He's not crazy athletic, but he makes up for it with his intelligence. And I think Nikola Jovic, a very interesting prospect in this draft class, a very underrated prospect in this draft class. And I think if he can fit with the culture in Minnesota, which is a huge question mark because a lot of these guys are number 1 or number 2 picks, completely gifted, but not really high motor kind of guys. I don't know if the culture fit is going to work, but I think the talent fit and the great length at 6'10" with the ability to give you some offense, unlike a Jared Vanderbilt, makes a lot of sense. Going on to pick 20, and I think Tari Eason has fallen a little bit too much at this point. I don't really like the prospect, but I think he's a good enough player to be drafted in the mid to late first round. And I think the team that needs length, who picked an Ousmane Dieng at pick number 9, is going to continue to fill that hole on their roster that is that 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" kind of guy who can stretch the floor a little bit. Tari Eason, a very solid defender, very big, heavy forward in the post, and I think he's going to give a lot of versatility to the Spurs if he gets some minutes. Now at pick 21 with the Denver Nuggets. And the Nuggets are in such a weird spot. When they're healthy, they're set already. They have Nikola Jokic, they have Jamal Murray, they have Michael Porter Jr. Then their supplementary pieces are good enough. Aaron Gordon, Will Barton, Bones Highland, Monty Morris. I think they're set when they're healthy. So I'm going to draft for them as if they're healthy. If they're not, if Jamal Murray is still a huge question mark, if Michael Porter Jr. is a huge question mark, then you might go with Jalen Williams here. But I'm going to take MarJon Beauchamp. I'm going to give him effort. I'm going to give him defense. I'm going to give him a tough nose mentality, kind of Matt Barnes kind of player. Now, he isn't a great shooter, and he's a little bit older at about 21 and a half years old of the time of the draft. But MarJon Beauchamp, really impressive for the G League Ignite. When his shot is falling, there's times where it looked like he was the best player out there on the court with the Dyson Daniels and Jaden Hardy and a Michael Foster and a Fanbao Zhang. But at other times when his shot isn't falling, he kind of disappears. So what he's going to do is fill that Jeff Green, JaMychal Green kind of hole that they traded away to get pick 30. They're going to give him great size. MarJon Beauchamp is a great, phenomenal athlete, and he's going to be a really good 3-and-D prospect for the Nuggets. Moving on to pick 22 and the first of 2 picks for the Memphis Grizzlies. And I say at this point, Trey Jones, Tyus Jones, whatever his fucking name is probably gone. He's indicated he wants to be a starting point guard. He has earned that role with being the assisted turnover king for the last 15 years. And honestly, if I'm the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm not paying him any more than backup money, because when you saw John Morant go out, when the starting point guard responsibilities are put on his shoulders, he's not quite living up to it as much as when he's just running with the 2s playing backup point guard to John Morant. So I think at this point, you take the best backup point guard available. And unlike what this big board says for ESPN, I'm going Andrew Nembhard. I was really impressed with the tape that I saw. Now, his job wasn't overly complicated there at Gonzaga. Give the ball to Drew Timme, give the ball to Chet Holmgren, get the fuck out of the way. But he's got really good size on him, 6'4", 6'5". He's a really good, really agile defender and a solid facilitator. He is my number 2 point guard off the board. Fills a need, makes too much sense at pick 22. Now to pick 23, and the 76ers are retaining their first round pick in that James Harden, Ben Simmons swap. So who do they take? They need a lot. Now, you can go a couple directions with the Sixers. You can take a backup center. They have an Andre Drummond-sized hole on this team now behind Joel Embiid. You could take another backup ball handler. James Harden sucks. Tyrese Maxey isn't exactly a good backup point guard. So hypothetically, theoretically, point guard is a huge need for this team. Now, do you want to take a Kennedy Chandler with that pick? I don't know. And then the other option is 3-and-D prospect. And ironically, weirdly enough, this team is kind of lacking in 3-and-D players. Tobias Harris qualifies. Danny Green's getting up there in age. Matisse Thybulle, great defender, can't shoot the 3. Shake Milton, they try to put him in as a point guard. He can't play that. Jaden Springer hasn't had a lot of run. Furkan Korkmaz can't shoot the 3. Danny Green, we already talked about. So this team kind of needs 3-and-D players. It needs point guards. It needs centers. So you could go any direction with this team. I'm just going to take the best 3-and-D prospect off the board at this point in Jalen Williams. Number 24, and I've been mocking this all the time. It just makes too much sense. EJ Liddell to the Bucks. great toughness, a little bit undersized, gives you that Bobby Portis kind of get out of my way. I'm a big tough guy, roll on this team. And now at pick 25, the third of the Spurs pick. And I think this player has fallen way too much at Jaden Hardy. Now he doesn't really fit into what they're doing here, but he is a very young player. He's a very capable, high upside player. Remember, he was top 5 coming into the 2022 draft season, and he just fell off because he really struggled with the G League Ignite. Doesn't have a great basketball IQ. Maybe they'll be able to do something with him out there in the San Antonio. But when I'm drafting for the Spurs, I always look for high-end potential upside. And I think Jaden Hardy, of all the players left, has probably some of, if not the highest upside left at pick 25. Going on to pick 26, and this is another team with a very similar philosophy to what they're doing in San Antonio. Draft young guys, draft for the upside, and hope that you can hit on a few of these players. With that in mind, I'm not going to go after a sophomore like a Dalen Terry who's not very impressive physically, or a Walker Kessler. I might go Blake Wesley here, but I'm going to go with the crazy athlete in Kendall Brown. Now, if you've been paying attention throughout the year, Kendall Brown had some top 10 hype going into the season. He played well. He's a crazy athlete, and he shoots the three a little bit better than Jeremy Sochan. His issue is that he's not as smart. He doesn't have the same basketball IQ as Jeremy Sochan, so it's kind of a tit for tat, but I have them as two very comparable prospects. So if you're taking Jeremy Sochan top 15, top 10, then you got to take Kendall Brown in the first round at the very least. So I have him going to the all upside Rockets. Going to be a very fun alley-oop lob threat for Kevin Porter Jr. Here at pick 27, and I say take the next best point guard available. You could get another 3-and-D player. You could get a backup center at this spot, but I think their need for point guard is so great. Their need for facilitation whenever Kyle Lowry sits out his 15, 20, 30 games a season is so huge. And Gabe Vincent, for everything that we love him for his toughness, his tenacity, his shooting, he is just not a facilitator. So I'm taking the number 3 point guard off the board. And for me, that's JD Davison. I know he's fallen to 50 here in the ESPN draft board. I'm not really sure what it is about the JD Davison hate. I think he's a very good point guard prospect, super young, still a freshman, and a great facilitator. Now, his basketball IQ on the defensive end is severely lacking. I mentioned that in my top 5 sleepers video, but I think he's the 3rd rated point guard off the board. I think he's getting criminally underrated, and I think a team that needs facilitation, I think a team that needs players that have chips on their shoulders, JD Davison fits really well to the Heat. Going on to the Warriors, and I don't know why they keep mocking 3, 4, 5-year white guys to the Warriors. I think he should go upside, best player available. That's Blake Wesley for me. Really impressive prospect out of Notre Dame. Not a great shooter. That's why he's going behind Malachi Branham, but I was really impressed with his college tape. I think he's going to be a good player in a couple years. Needs to go to a good system, needs to develop. Makes a lot of sense going to the Golden State Warriors. And here at pick 29, the second to last pick. And once again, the Grizzlies don't need a lot of players on their team. They're kind of set. Their roster is all stocked up. So at this point, you just got to go best 3-and-D player available. And for me, the next best 3-and-D player is a guy who's getting a little bit of hated on, Max Christie. Now, he shot really poorly from the 3-point line. He started the season horribly for Michigan State, but he came on a little bit in the second half. He started to put it together that all he's going to do is shoot the 3, play defense, and give you as much effort as he possibly can. And for a guy who was a top 10, top 15 prospect to fall way down into 45, I think it's a little bit of a steal because I believe in Max Christie's game. If he can develop, if he goes to the right system, feels like in Memphis, they got a lot of good things going on right now, and they can turn Max Christie's career around, which means at pick 30, what do you want to go? Now, originally I had Kennedy Chandler going here, but I think they have too many undersized players on their team. I think getting another guy who's 5'10", 5'11" on this team that plays a point guard position doesn't really make a lot of sense. You could go backup center here. Are they going to keep Boogie Cousins, or do they want to go with the Walker Kessler? Do they want to go with an Ishmael Kamagate? You could get another 3-and-D prospect like a Trevor Keels was moderately impressive, like a Wendell Moore as well. I'm going to go with Dalen Terry here and just kind of play the odds. If he's a good point guard, you have a good backup point guard. Monty Morris can move more to his scoring, shooting, off-ball guard role. If he's not a good point guard, you could drop him down to the 2 or the 3, have him become a 3-and-D prospect as well. D up the other team's best player. I think it makes a lot of sense to go in whichever direction you want with Dalen Terry, whatever he's shown flashes of. I don't think he's going to be a point guard. I think he's going to be more off-ball guard, playing the 2 position, which is perfectly fine. That's a position they need. He's 6'7", has great wingspan, has great size, and he can be a very solid defender for them. And that is going to be the last 2022 mock draft. The top 5 looking a little different, even the bottom 5 looking a little different. All in all, though, I think going to be one heck of a draft. It's been one heck of a draft season, grading all these players, watching all these prospects, watching the hours and hours and hours of game tape. But it has been a hell of a lot of fun. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one.